Welcome to Sunday School. I'm Elder Robert Wilson, and thank you so much for being part of our class this morning. Our subject this morning is tradition and love. Tradition and love. We'll be coming from Songs of Solomon, chapter 4, verses 8 through 16, and chapter 5, verse 1. Our Bible truth said God ordained committed relationship. So committed relationships don't happen by chance. They are ordained by God. Our memory verse says, "Awake, O north wind, and come thy south. Blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruit." You know, every marriage begins with an invitation to love. And that invitation to love puts us in a place where the relationship becomes really serious. And that leads to the exchanging of the vows. In our lesson this morning, we see the groom-to-be send out an invitation of love. And he waits for a response back from his beloved. So when we look at it, look at our lesson this morning, starting in verse 8. It said, "Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon, from the lion's den, from the mountains of the leopards." So he calls for his lover from Lebanon. It's a distant place. The other places where he mentioned Amana, Shinir, and Hermon. Now these places are aligned with her location from him. And this verse also speaks of the lion's den and the mountains of leopards. So this represents a place of danger, a place of mystery and power. She is inaccessible to him, so he calls for her. He calls for her from Lebanon. Verse number 9 says, "Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck." He said, "Thou hast ravished my heart." Now the word ravish means to seize or to carry out. In the literary term, it means an intense delight or to be enraptured. So he calls her my sister, which in those times that was a term that had romantic affection attached to it. So it was a romantic affection term. And it's denoted intimate relationship. And he also calls her his spouse. So what he says that you have ravished my heart, you have carried me away, you have enraptured me. I've been blown away by you, just as a vapor of smoke is blown away by the wind. So he's telling her how much she means to him, how great of impact that she has on his life. So after he described the impact that she has on him, he began to describe her in terms of her attributes and how she adds to his life. So in verse number 10, it says, "How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thy ointment than all spices." So he says, how fair, how beautiful, how smooth, how satisfying is her love. He says that how much better your love is than wine. He says better than wine. Wine is a symbol of romance. And he's telling her that her love is better than all that resembles what romance is. And her ointment, and perhaps her her cologne that she wears. It gives off a aroma that is greater than all spices or the most prized fragrance around. So he began to let her know that there is absolutely nothing, there's absolutely nobody that compares with her, and that her love is intoxicating to him. If we look at verse 11 said, "Thy lips, O my spouse, drops as the honeycomb. Milk and honey are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garment is like the smell of Lebanon." Drops as the honeycomb. Now, the honeycomb was a highly prized item, and milk and honey is an Old Testament expression, and it represents fertility, prosperity, and abundance. All that life can offer is found in her. This is what he's saying. All that life can offer me is found in you. It's found in her to be savored just a little bit at a time. Just as the honey drops out of the honeycomb, just a little bit at a time. He's saying that it's too much to take in all at once. Too much for a certain impact, but should be savored and taken in just as the honey drops from the honeycomb. And he mentioned her smell. He says her garment is like the smell of Lebanon. So what he's talking about here is Lebanon were renowned for their cedar garden or their cedar forests. And just the smell of anybody that was passing by or going through, the smell was so amazing. So he was telling her that the smell of her garment was compared to this amazing smell that came from this forest. The aroma that she had was that good. Now her appeal was not just in her physical attraction, but in her self-presentation. It was how she carried herself, the air she had about herself. And of course, the fact that she had saved herself just for him, that added to the excitement, that added to the anticipation of them being together. So he uses this example of a garden as the pleasure of the day that she would totally give herself over to him. So he compares her to a garden. All right, verse 12 says, "A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed." Now, a garden represents a place of beauty, and a place of pleasure. It's a feast for the sight, for the smell. It's a feast for the taste. Also, the fountains are another source of pleasure because they're satisfying to the eye and they refreshes the skin. But this pleasure that he's talking about at this time is still inaccessible to him. Now, the term that he used here, enclosed or shut up, this means that no one has enjoyed the sexual pleasure that she has because she is pure. Now, she recognized too on her part that her virginity is very valuable and that she would not waste her time and waste it on the wrong person. And she won't waste her time and waste it for the wrong time. So she is kind of connected, or she is dedicated to him by keeping herself. Verse 13 says, "Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranate, with pleasant fruits, camphire, and spikenard. Verse 14, spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices. So he goes on to compare her to a garden that's full of all the best plants, the best trees. And these were not just best plants and best trees, they are the most expensive. We know that frankincense and myrrh were expensive items. These are some of the things that were brought to Jesus. So we know, of course, that no garden can contain all these things that he's mentioning here. But what he is saying, that she is all this and more. Nobody else can find a garden like this. He was saying that if there was a garden like this, you are like this garden. And beside this garden, nobody else is going to find another garden like this. Or nobody else is going to find another garden like you. So he was saying that you are all this wrapped up in one person, my sister, my spouse. He was saying that his spouse has no equal. Verse 15 says, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. Now, waters of refreshing and sustaining quality of her love. Sustaining qualities of her love. One that never runs dry. Her appeal is lasting, and the satisfaction that she's offered to her lover will never end. It's never gonna stop. It's gonna go on from day to day, from month to month, from year to year. Always satisfied, never runs out. Verse 16, it says, awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. And when we get into verse 16, he starts out by saying, awake. This means that it is time now for the relationship to be consummated. To be consummated. So he calls out, he says, north wind, O north wind, and come, thy south. Now, this might represent some barriers that was between them, or some gates that was locked because they was in two different places. So this was some gates or barriers that held them up. But now they are open. And now at last she is free to come to him. So he says, blow upon my garden. Blow upon my garden. Now this term right here, blow upon my garden, means a physical encounter, a physical attraction, or a physical event. So now they are finally together and close enough to touch. Now they're having physical contact. So he says, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. So he's saying that the spices may flow out. Now it's time to enjoy all the beauty, all the attributes about her, all the beauty, the smell of her garment, the smell of her, the fairness of her skin, the softness of her skin, everything about her that he has described, that he's been talking about. Now the time has come that he can enjoy this, because she is now there with him, and now they are enjoying physical contact. So it said, blow by my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. So now she began Now that she is here, she gives him a response. She says, let my beloved come into his garden. Come into his garden. Now remember back up in verse number 12, she was known just as a garden. But now that she's here, she says, let my beloved come into his garden. What she's doing here, she's giving herself over to him. She's turning over ownership to him. Now she belongs to him. So he responds back. He responds back and says that I have come into my garden. But before then, she said, let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruit. That means that she was offering up herself to him totally. You know, a couple of verses ago, he was waiting for the day that she came and gave herself over totally to him. So now that day has come. So now she said, let my beloved come into his garden and eat of his pleasant fruit. So now they are having that physical contact, and now that day has come where the marriage is consummated. So now he's sending out his response back to her in verse number 1 in chapter 5. He said, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. His response, he is echoing the acknowledgement that she is now totally his. She is giving herself over to him, and he has accepted that. And now she belongs totally to him. He says, I am come into my garden. I am come into my garden. This means that the consummation has taken place, and this sexual act has taken place. But it means more than that. It means more than just this sexual act has taken place. It speaks of a time where a new stage in their life is starting to begin. And it moves him from a position where he had great privilege and great sexual pleasure to a position of responsibility. The term that he used, my God, reminds us that marriage is very important, and it takes time. It takes attention. It takes effort to flourish and to grow. So in our final verse here, it also speaks of the pleasure that he's gonna have and the commitment of loving his wife faithfully and attending to her needs for the rest of his life. Now, this lesson this morning gave us an example of how we should feel and how we should express ourselves or express our love to our mate. And we can still do that today. And there are 3 basic things that we can do to express our love for our mates in our marriage. And that is to meditate, to praise, and to consider. Now, to meditate means to meditate on the good and the sweet quality that they bring. To praise is to extol or to praise them for their physical attributes. And to consider means to consider the beauty, the joy, and the value that they bring into our everyday life.